Bonjour, mes amis. If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. Works every time like a charm. Good morning. Good morning. I so love to hear the buzz in the room. I love OCASI conferences. My name is Debbie Douglas, and I'm the Executive Director of OCASI, and will be one half of your emceeing team this morning. Looking forward to a fantastic 2 days of conversations, of laughter, of debates and arguments, all of course done with love and compassion. We have a full 2 days for you and for us. Our conference this year is called Solidarity in Vision and Action. It is a pleasure to see all of you here from across the province, and I always look up as if I can see them, and to all of our colleagues and friends joining virtually, welcome. As you can see, our conference this year is bigger than in most years. I think this speaks to the enthusiasm and commitment of all of us who work in this sector. So a very, very warm welcome to all of you. Our conferences are bilingual, so if you do not speak both of our official languages, please grab, and I don't have my headset, please grab a headset just outside the door. It's complimentary. You no longer have to leave ID as we used to do in the past. So unless you're fluent in both French and English, please grab a headset. We encourage you, when you speak, to use one of the official language that you're most comfortable with. And I'm speaking to my English-speaking friends. Headsets are not only for Francophones. Yeah? I heard the guilty rumble through the room. So unless you're bilingual, please grab a headset. I would like to invite Alfred Lam, before I continue, to start us off in a good way with a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Debbie. It has often been said that the reading of the land acknowledgement has somehow lost its meaning or significance because the practice has become routine or even performative. And I suppose to some extent it is normal for words to lose their impact when they are repeated enough times. But as we gather this morning as a sector of immigrant-serving organizations and a people who stand against colonialism and racism, and as we come upon the words of the land acknowledgement, perhaps the issue is not so much that these words have become routine or even performative. Perhaps the greater danger for us is that we have become comfortable with them. We've become comfortable in denouncing racism without confronting the racism that exists in our midst, in our organizations, in our churches, in our faith communities. We have become comfortable in acknowledging that we live on stolen land without confronting our part in perpetuating that continuous injustice. We have become comfortable in the emptiness of saying we recognize the dish with one spoon covenant while we conduct ourselves with a spirit of competition rather than sharing of resources, taking only what we need and making sure there's enough for everyone. In a day and age where we see so many of the values that we hold dear to our hearts seems to be crumbling in front of our eyes, it is important for us to recognize that the only safeguard and guardrails against that is not found in rules or institutions or structures. The only guardrails we have is the inherent sense of goodness and compassion and justice and generosity within us as humans. Our inherent sense of right and wrong and our commitment to make things right when there is a wrong. And that's why this matters. And so this morning we acknowledge that the land on which OCASI is situated is the traditional territory of many indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. This land is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years. We recognize the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to share and care for the resources found around the Great Lakes. At OCASI, we are committed to incorporating the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action and the calls to justice from the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Report into our policy and advocacy work. We express our solidarity with Indigenous communities across Turtle Island who continue to experience colonial violence, including gender-based violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. We also commit to deepening our understanding of Indigenous history and building relationships of solidarity through our capacity development initiatives. OCASI respects the right to self-determination and land back for Indigenous peoples globally and acknowledges our responsibility to stand in solidarity with them. Thank you.
I forgot to introduce my boss. So this wonderful man standing beside me is Alfred Lam. He's the Executive Director of the Center for Immigrant and Community Services and Chair of the OCASI Board of Directors. Thank you. Before we introduce and have our traditional Indigenous blessings, we have some announcements to share. I've already talked about the microphone for those of you who are just coming in. If you are not bilingual in English and French, please grab headsets right outside the doors. Just go, they'll hand one to you. Oh, that's right. All plenaries and workshops held in this room will have both simultaneous French and English translation. And so it's critically important that not only for our plenaries, but also if you are scheduled to attend a workshop in this room, you will need both headsets. Our colleagues online will also be participating in all workshops that's held in this ballroom.
If you're staying at a hotel, please note that check-in time is 3 p.m. In the meantime, feel free to store your luggage in the coat check room located in front of the elevators.
Make sure to visit our marketplace. Usually, for those of you who've been coming to the conference for years, you would know we usually had it out here in the hallway, but there's so many of us this year that we have created a special space in a room out to the right and then another right. We have over 20 organizations and women-led businesses from across Ontario offering all sorts of information and goods and services. We've built in enough breaks, so please, please, please visit our marketplace.
All our plenary sessions will be both video and audio taped. OCASI staff will be taking photographs throughout the conference. If you do not want to be photographed, please add a red sticker to the top right corner of your name tag above your name, and you can get those red stickers at the registration table. And please make sure that it is visible.
We are offering, as usual, a quiet space. It's the Don Mills room. It's down the hallway, heading to the next set of elevators to your left. This is a space to process your thoughts, to reflect on the day, to do some stretches, or to say your prayers. Please don't have conversations with each other or talk on the phone in this room. Should you begin to feel overwhelmed by some of the topics that are being discussed today, just because there's so much happening around us in this world, there's someone to speak with. You may text CHAT, C-H-A-T, to 416-627-9407. That's 416-627-9407. Just text CHAT, and someone will be available for you to chat with.
Please find female and gender-neutral bathrooms on this level and male bathrooms on the upper level of the hotel lobby.
Every year, we hold a 50-50 draw. OCASI is the only conference where someone will go home richer than when they came. The other half of the money goes to the United Way of Greater Toronto. They have been supporting OCASI for 45 years. Since our inception, they are a policy supporter. They support our policy advocacy work. So please buy tickets. 1 ticket for $5, 5 tickets for $20. I am looking around the room. OCASI staff and board, if you're selling tickets, please hold up your hand. I see someone over there. They all have red bags. Are those red bags? They will be coming. They will be following you around. They will be guilting all of you who are here, who are leaders in your organizations, who are funders, those of you who are managers and make more money. So please buy tickets. It goes to a good cause. We will be doing the draw at the end of the conference tomorrow. You must be present to win. So make plans to stay until the end of the conference. We will also be raffling off a painting by, the artist name just went right out of my name, Colombian tattoo artist, Valentina Lozano Leon. And Valentina will actually be here doing the painting over the next 2 days. So please feel free, drop by, chat with her, inspire her. And you and someone will be going home with a lovely piece of art as well.
Now, we appreciate your feedback, so please complete an evaluation form for each plenary and session that you attend. You can find the forms on your tables, at the sessions, at the conference app, or simply by scanning the QR code inside your programs.
OCASI is currently partnering with the Canadian Mental Health Association, CMHA Toronto, on a provincial study to better understand workplace stress and mental health challenges across Ontario's immigrant and refugee-serving sector. If you're from a member agency, especially those of you from outside Toronto, we invite you to take a few minutes during the conference to complete this survey. And I have a copy of the survey somewhere here. Just bear with me a minute. There you are. Thank you, Carolina.
Yeah.
So it looks like this. There's a QR code that will get you into the survey. Please take some time. It shouldn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes and complete the survey. In addition, many of you have been buzzing around IRCC, moving to change NARS and how NARS is done. I must admit, I don't quite understand NARS. So we're asking you to comment on your table is one question. Thank you, Manjeet, for developing that question. Please take your time, share with us your ideas. We will collate all of it and get it back to IRCC. And let me add, earlier this week, your organization also received a survey about our priorities as a sector that we want to feed back up to IRCC. Please encourage your organization, if you're the one responsible, please complete that survey and get it back to us by end of Thursday or Friday at noon at the latest. Critically important for us to be able to inform how it is we move forward as a sector as we are facing significant cuts to our sector over the next few years. This is your opportunity to have a say. You're the ones on the front line. You're the one managing programs. We need your voices to be heard.
We would also like to remind you that our OCASI Annual General Meeting is today at 3:45 p.m., and it will be followed by a wonderful dinner. And please connect with the registration table to complete your registration or to pay your membership fees. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something that may be difficult for a lot of us, but let's all put our phones in silent mode. Let us all be present, and most of all, be able to relax, reflect, and enjoy our time together.
I want to acknowledge everyone who worked hard over the last several months to make this conference a reality. We had over 500 people registered to be here in person, another couple of hundred registered for online, and a waiting list for those wanting to join us here in person. The sector is excited to come together and to share and learn from each other. So I want to thank you for showing up. Starting yesterday with our colleagues from the Resettlement Adaptation Program, Assistance Program, thank you for showing up. Thank you for coming and agreeing to share and learn and discuss and debate and to have fun with each other over the next 2 days. I want to thank our advisory committee, drawn from member agencies who generously shared their time, their input and guidance in developing an inspiring and engaging program. A great thank you to my colleagues at OCASI staff, to our board, and to our many speakers who, as soon as the call came out from OCASI, all said, yes, yes, we want to participate. Yes, we want to lend our expertise. Yes, we want to be part of this important conversation. And I also want to acknowledge our funders. The funders of this conference are the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, and the United Way of Greater Toronto.
And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Natasha Fisher, our Indigenous Knowledge Keeper, who will be providing blessings to start our professional development conference. Born and raised in northwestern Ontario and a member of Long Lake No. 58 First Nation, Natasha Fisher is a vocalist, a songwriter, and producer who crafts songs that take influence from both traditional pop and alternative genres carried out by edgy melodies and heartfelt storytelling. Her songs capture the intensity of heartbreak, healing, and self-discovery while incorporating Indigenous elements that add depth and authenticity. Natasha's music carries a raw and emotional energy that is both nostalgic and fresh, inviting listeners into a journey of independence, recovery, and resilience. Since 2019, Natasha has been traveling across Ontario and leading healing through music workshops and speaking on issues relating to addictions and mental health. She's also known for her content creation on TikTok, where she addresses Indigenous issues such as politics and identity, as well as her covers of Indigenous artists. Natasha, wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
Hello, Anine, bonjour. I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience as a mixed Indigenous person on this land. And first, let me reintroduce myself. My name is Natasha Fisher. I am a Ojibwe and Finnish singer-songwriter, speaker, and performer from Thunder Bay, Ontario. Yeah, my experience, I grew up mixed. And, you know, on one hand, my father was an Ojibwe man. My father grew up in a small community on a reserve about 3.5 hours northeast of Thunder Bay, where I grew up. You know, we're First Nations. We're the first peoples of this land. My father grew up going to Indian day school. My grandmother went to residential school. And, you know, me and my family dealt with the residuals of our country's dark history. You know, we're still here, we're proud of our culture, but there's a lot of things that, as a young person, I didn't understand growing up. I was discriminated against a lot in my hometown of Thunder Bay, and a lot of the times I didn't quite know why. You know, growing up mixed is a unique experience, I think, of not knowing which world you walk in and not knowing how you're seen from the outside. So for somebody that I was going to school with, you know, they might have saw me as brown or as an Indigenous person, and sometimes going back to my own community, they saw me as a white girl. So I think for me, a lot of my healing and growing and maturing has come from the connections to my culture that I've made as a mature adult and that I've made as a growing person. I want to share a little bit about my other side. You know, my mother is a first-generation Canadian from Finland. My Finnish grandparents immigrated to this country over 60 years ago into my small northern city of Thunder Bay. And many people don't know this, but Thunder Bay has the largest population of Finnish people outside of Finland. And it's kind of random, right? It's like, what the heck? But yeah, and like my grandparents immigrated for a better life. They immigrated for, you know, economic development. And at the time, Thunder Bay was looking for people who wanted to work in forestry. And one of the things that people might not know is that Thunder Bay and Finland have very similar terrain. What's the word? Yeah, I guess. So yeah, Finnish people were welcomed into Thunder Bay. But they also experienced hardships as well, leaving their culture. But one of the things that they found in Thunder Bay was community. Like I said, there was the largest population of Finnish people outside of Finland, so there was a lot of Finnish language speakers. There was a restaurant called the Hoito, which was like, if you know anything, has anyone ever been to Thunder Bay? Yeah, have you ever been to the Hoito? Okay, well, sadly it burned down a couple years ago, so I don't know why I'm promoting it so hard, but but my mumu, which is my Finnish grandmother, she worked there when she came, and that was where all of the forestry workers and the carpenters would come there for lunch, and it was kind of the hub for Finnish speakers in Thunder Bay, where everyone would speak their language and meet other Finnish-speaking people, which was so important. I'm totally off. I'm off my script here. Anyways, they built a beautiful life, and they built community. And I think that one of the biggest things for me as a young person is watching how people around you live their lives, right? And for me, I got to watch my one side of my family find community so far away from home. And, you know, it was beautiful to see. Like, they were like, oh yeah, they live down the street, they live over there. And like, my mumu, she just passed away this year, sadly, but she had the thickest accent still, you know, 60 years later, because she spoke majority Finnish away from home. And I got to see like how beautiful that really was, to keep your culture alive being so far away from where you grew up. And then on the other side, I had, you know, my father, who, like, because of residential school and because of the system, and you know, because my grandmother went to residential school, she went from the ages of 5 to 15, you know, and that was the goal, was to be rid of this culture, right? And you know, and that affected my dad not knowing his culture, and that affected me not knowing mine. So growing up, you know, feeling that disconnection, but seeing my grandparents from so far away come and find their community in Thunder Bay, I felt like that was, you know, interesting, because there's a lot of us as Indigenous people, you know, are still learning. We're still learning who we are, and because of the effects of residential school, and because of the, you know, the wedge that it caused within our lives. So, I mean, I'm grateful to have seen both sides, and to be part of two communities. You know, not a lot of people can say that, and I've been looking at it from a different light the older I get. And you know, my parents, although being so different in culture, they found so many similarities, and there was so much love there. These lands have been home to so many and continue to be home for so many to come. And I've learned through my parents how cultures can come together and make something beautiful. And, you know, without immigration, I wouldn't be here today. And, you know, they taught me the importance of community and resources, and like a third place, you know, a place to go outside of your home, a place to meet with other people like you. So about 10 years ago, I moved from Thunder Bay to here. And I'm like you heard in my bio, I'm a singer and I'm an artist, and more so I've been speaking to rooms of people about mental health and addictions, which is something that I've overcome in my lifetime. And yeah, I was so far away from my community, and I felt like for so long I was looking for my third place. And I was grateful more recently to be a part of the Indigenous community here in Toronto. And through that, I have, you know, I've been here for 10 years now, and I've created some really amazing bonds with some amazing Indigenous people in this area, and from Southern Ontario. You know, we're on the Great Lakes down here, but I'm from the Great Lakes on the top at Lake Superior. So through that, I've been attending events, women's drum circles, powwow dance classes, things that have made me feel closer to my culture, and just finding that community here. And yeah, I've met a lot of women that have taught me some amazing things. So I would like to share a song with you. And it's called the Strong Woman Song, and I learned it at the Indigenous Center here in Toronto. So. Chimigwech. So how you say welcome in my language, it's called Anishinaabe Moen, and it's beamed again. Can we say beamed again? Beamed again. So welcome, Chimigwech. Thank you for having me share some words, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this conference. I'll be around, and I'll be here tomorrow to say some words as well. So Chimigwech, beamed again.
Chimigwech, Natasha, thank you for those blessings and songs. You know, as a woman of African descent whose people were stolen and brought to this place, it so resonates with me, the stories of the loss of culture and the displacement even within your own lands. And so when Alfred was doing the land acknowledgement, it always makes me recommit to walking hand in hand with my Indigenous sisters. So thank you. We have a short video for you. Mistake, No Miracle by Marian Jacko. Marian has spent her entire legal career tirelessly working on behalf of children and Indigenous peoples. In 2015, she joined the Indigenous Justice Division of the Ministry of Attorney General. She's currently the children's lawyer for Ontario, the first Indigenous female lawyer to serve in this capacity. Please enjoy this short film.
Was it a mistake? So it is 2020, and we are living through history. We are in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, and we are in the middle of a crisis, but unrelated to the pandemic. My father was a police officer, and I grew up learning the value of respect, of having boundaries. My father was firm, yet kind. Everywhere I look today, there are news reports of police violence, mostly against Indigenous and Black people. But sadly, this is not new. This crisis we are in the middle of has been going on for ages. My heart is heavy with sadness, sorrow, and fear. How much more do my people need to suffer and endure? We've been through so much already. How much more do Black people need to suffer and endure? They have been through so much already. My daughters are Afro-Indigenous, biracial, Anishinaabe, and Jamaican. They are also my heart. And when I look out into the world, I am beyond afraid. Thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, anti-Black racism at all levels. I am horrified, discouraged, disempowered. I feel hopeless. Then I ask myself, what have I done? Was it a mistake? Did I bring these two beautiful girls into this world only to suffer? Double jeopardy, or worse. To be biracial and female is not safe. I cry and then weep. Why should the color of one's skin dictate how you will be treated or where you will fit into society? What will your eventual encounter with the police look like? Will you survive? So it is 2020, and we are living through history. We are in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, and we are in the middle of a crisis, but unrelated to the pandemic. I am not an expert on racism, but I do know what it feels like. I do know what it does to your spirit. For me, this is a turning point. I can let it defeat me, or I can do something about it. Let us support one another in helping to heal our broken spirits. Let us lean on one another to help blaze the trail for those coming behind us. The elders speak about the generations looking up at us from beneath Mother Earth, and they are pleading with us to do something. We have suffered and endured, and we have been through so much already. We are resilient. We will support one another, we will lean on one another, and we will get through this together. In solidarity, our spirits will heal, and the trail that our children, our future grandchildren, our future generations are pleading with us to blaze will become a reality, because our spirits will unite and be unbroken. So it is 2020, and we are living through history. We are in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, and we are in the middle of a crisis, but unrelated to the pandemic. And I realize it was not a mistake, but rather it is a miracle.
Powerful, isn't it? Let's take a moment. Amazing. I'm a wannabe filmmaker, so I get inspired when I see these things. We've asked 3 of our colleagues to come and help us set the tone for today. Ideas that ignite. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and I mean exactly 3 minutes, to share whatever it is that they want to tell us today. As soon as we hit 3 minutes, and I need my phone to count the time, I'm gonna start clapping if you don't stop. And I expect you to join me in clapping, because we're getting them off the stage in a good way. So, in the order that they will appear, George Lee Berry, the Canada Settlement Services Coordinator from Franco-Queer; Mbalu Lumor, Director of Programs and Newcomer Services at the Canadian Centre for Victims of Torture and the Provincial Director of the OCASI Board; Tanya Roos Chapman, the Bilingual Senior Coordinator, Anti-Racism, Social Justice and Equity at the Council. 3 minutes, George Lee.
Merci. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Hello. Thank you. My name is George Lee. I use the pronouns he and she. I am in charge of coordinating services at the Franco-Queer establishment. In my 3 minutes, I will take a moment to thank OCASI and Franco-Queer for giving me the opportunity to share with you this morning an idea, a project that excites me, which is none other than an exciting, crazy idea of creating a housing cooperative for 2S LGBTQA+ people. I recognize that the right to housing is a fundamental right, but allow me to make this positive discrimination in favor of 2S LGBTQA+ people, since we know that they truly face many difficulties regarding their identity or sexual orientation. And I speak from my personal experience, having arrived here in Ontario in December 2019, where I faced many challenges in finding safe, affordable, and inclusive housing. So 5 years later, at the coordination of settlement services at Franco-Queer, the challenges remain the same for finding housing, especially for 2S LGBTQA+ people. So this project is really to support these individuals. I am aiming for practically 5,000 buildings. Sorry, 5,000 buildings. It's a 5-year project where I will really need your involvement. When I say your involvement, I will need the support of the decision makers who are in the room. And there are 2 of us with this project. I am practically missing 3 more people to be able to form this cooperative. And I know I will find more than three people in the room truly passionate about the challenges faced by 2 LGBTQA+ individuals. And this housing initiative, it's not just a simple real estate project or real estate initiative. It's truly an initiative aimed at providing a space and decent housing for 2 LGBTQA+ people. So in addition to providing a roof, this housing cooperative will certainly have a trained team, and you will have access to services in both official languages. When I say both official languages, I mean French and English. And we are considering staff trained in the challenges or realities of 2 LGBTQA+ people. And I give the responsibility to Franco Queer through its Inclusive Partner Program to train people regarding this reality. And I would also need the support of community organizations, whether you are French speaking or English speaking. You are welcome to join me in this idea, and I will come back to give you the answer in 2030. Thank you very much.
Right at the 3-minute mark. Impressive. Okay, Valu.
This is really difficult, Debbie. You put me in. It's a mission impossible. You know, working in the sector and you're giving me 3 minutes. Where's my slide? Perfect. 3 minutes starts now? Okay. When I was asked to speak, 2 words came to my mind: power and privilege. And this will came to my mind that, and it reminded me how different aspects of our identity intersect to create unique experience of power and privilege, privilege to be here, privilege to connect. And more importantly, it shows how our intersecting identities may contribute to both oppression and privilege. So in my years working in the sector, I've worked with amazing people from all generations, the Gen Z, 858, they're at work. You give them a task, by the time you turn around, done. Whoa! Precise, accurate, and I've always been admired. And at 4:58, they're right by the door. And I'm like, damn, how'd you do it? You know, so how do we keep up with that energy? Then I've had the privilege as well to work with the older generation, the generation that holds the bull by the horn. Some of them have called themselves dinosaurs. I'm like, dinosaur? But they've taught me resiliency. They've taught me that do or die, we're still there. And what they can see sitting, the younger generation might not see standing. That's an African proverb. Regardless of the generations, the millennials, the generation Y, X, I don't know, but the privilege of working with a service user to help them navigate a very complex system, I think it's very empowering. And we are the medicine. It reminds me of Asha Frost, an indigenous medicine woman who says, you are the medicine. The healing energy, the force that builds future citizens of this country. And each of us continues to play a critical role in moving the needle forward. And also, it reminds me of Frantz Fanon, that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. That slide, please, up. So there is hope. And it is important for us to realize that to solve the injustices of our time, we need to join forces across our identities to build interconnected movements and action strategies. So I hope in your discussions today, please think about your power, your privilege, and it's an opportunity to reset, re-strategize, and to be a healing vibration to uplift one another. Thank you.
Tanya.
Hello. Sorry, I just need my computer to see better. But so we talked about how this conference is about solidarity, vision, and action. And we've talked about truth and reconciliation. And I encourage us to take our commitments to truth and reconciliation seriously and ideally radically, in a way that not only pushes ourselves to learn and unlearn the ways that we have normalized, accepted, and benefited from Canada's colonial capitalist state, but in ways that will push back against that system and state that we participate in the reproduction of, all of us in this room today, just by being here, for example. One call of action to reconciliation is to seriously consider our own position as settler Canadians. Do I uphold practices that contribute to the marginalization of Indigenous people? I would add us to ask, do our organizations uphold these practices? If so, what can we do differently? Another call to action is to know where your ancestors came from and when they arrived in Canada. However, context is important. We must take into consideration, how do we immigrate to Canada? How did our ancestors arrive to Canada? The slave trade is the largest forced migration in human history, where more than 12 million Africans were stolen from their land and brought to the American continent. Dr. Ronaldo Walcott says that as a settler colonial country, Canada can only but support white settler politics elsewhere as the condition of its own existence. In other words, Canada relies on settler politics elsewhere in order to uphold itself. This reliance within a larger international system creates or helps create the very conditions that entice some to migrate and force others. Today, I hope that we can think about how the fact that there continue to be long-standing drinking water advisories in many First Nation communities across Canada is in fact connected to Canada's reliance on the exploitation of temporary foreign workers, for example, who are overwhelmingly treated as expendable, or how these advisories relate to Canada's investment into the genocide of Palestinians. If we take Walcott's statements further, we can recognize that Canada's complicity with Israel is not only a product of its own settler colonialism, but is a necessary action to maintain Canada as a settler colony capitalist state itself. Genocide is not a piece of Canada's colonial past. The Canadian state's existence is rooted in its logics, policies, and procedures that profit from the erasure that it enacts on Indigenous people here and abroad. Canada's commitment to truth and reconciliation is often hollow. Ours as individuals and as sectors cannot be, and it must include, interconnection and solidarity.
That was close. Thank you to our three dynamic speakers, George Lee, Mbalu, and Tanya. One more time, please. And thank you. See? Amazing how much information you can get out in 3 minutes. And now it is time to welcome our opening panel. Empowering workers, building equitable and inclusive workplaces. How can nonprofits advance decent work, fair wages, safe conditions, worker power, amid austerity and funding cuts. This panel will tackle pay gaps, labor rights, unions, and anti-oppressive policies. How do we align our values with our practice? It is my great pleasure to welcome our panel moderator, Surana Sandy, Chief Executive Officer of Skills for Change. Surana, please join me on stage.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see a full room. I've always enjoyed coming to OCASI's conferences, especially the Frontline Conference. It's very important that our frontline colleagues have an opportunity to engage with each other and to share and learn from each other. So today's session is really about frontline colleagues, the people who are doing the work, the people who meet clients, who run programs, who answer the phones, who handle crises, and hold communities together every single day, often while working in systems that don't always treat them fairly. So we're here today to talk about decent work and what it really means in our sector, fair pay that lets us live with dignity, workplaces that are safe and respectful, and organizations that live their values, not just talk about them. So we know times are hard. Funding cuts, short contracts, burnout rates are very real for our colleagues, but we also know we deserve better, our sector deserves better, our colleagues deserve better. And that change can start within our own sector and must start within our own sector. So I'm honored to moderate this conversation with three people who have spent their lives fighting for fairness, equity, and justice in work. So please join first Armin Yalnizyan. He's an economist and Atkinson Fellow on the future of workers. Armin has helped shape national conversations about wages and care work. We also have Dina Ladd, Executive Director of Workers Action Center. Dina has organized workers across Ontario to stand up for fair pay. And we have Marcia Akbar, Director of the BMO Newcomer Workforce Integration Lab and Research Lead on Labor Migration and Circummigration at TMU. Please join us, three of Marcia, Dina, and Armin. All right. So thank you. We're going to, I'm going to start with a question to Dina this morning. We're just going to stay, we're a little bit behind, so we're going to wrap up around 11, so keep it on time. So we try to be very tight with our answers, and we try to leave a couple of minutes at the end for questions from the audience. But Dina, I'm going to start with you, because you've worked with thousands of workers fighting for fair pay and decent working conditions. And for our colleagues here in the nonprofit sector who feel underpaid or afraid to speak up, what do you think is the first step they can take to start changing things?
Well, this is one of my favorite topics. I think at the end of the day, you aren't going to get it because the government suddenly sees the light and realizes that you do incredible work. We know that, right? So in my experience doing labor organizing for over 30 years, the sector has to organize. I mean, we've been having this conversation for a long time, right? Long time. I've got a few gray hairs here. And so I think that this sector, as we know, is undervalued, is under attack in a way that it's never been before. I mean, we've seen attacks in the past on the immigrant settlement sector, but I think at this particular moment, we're at a point where I don't think that there's any turning back from this moment. I think worldwide, countrywide, province-wide, We are seeing such a huge push by the right-wing governments that are in power to privatize services, to contract them out, to squeeze every last penny and dollar out of our agencies and out of the value of our labor. I work with non-unionized workers, and you'll see on your table right there a recent report that just got released this past week on wage theft. Non-unionized workers who you work with in your communities face such incredible wage theft and face such terrible working conditions. Just even in the last 10 years, $200 million has been assessed by the Ministry of Labor in terms of complaints that have gone forward. And we know that that's the tip of the iceberg. Many of the workers that we work with and our agencies don't bother filing complaints. They don't know how to navigate the portal. They're looking for their next job to pay their bills. So if that's who we work with and that's our community, what we say to those workers, because those are the workers that I organize, is we say you've got to organize. You've got to improve your wages and working conditions by raising the floor of wages and working conditions for us all. But as long as we're competing against each other, as long as our community agencies are fighting against each other for money and for resources, we're never going to raise the sector standards. So I think at this particular point, if there never has been before, we, as an immigrant serving settlement sector, have to organize in a way to challenge those in power. And if we can't do that through our agencies, we have to do that as volunteers and as community members. Because there is such an incredible attack right now on the communities that we work with. And guess what? We are next. This is what we're dealing with right now. And so I think that that is one of the most fundamental things that we need to get our heads around at this moment, is how are we going to join together as a sector and fight for this?
Thank you very much. And that really leads into the next question to Armin, because you're speaking all about individual and not collective action. And so Armin, from your experience and you coming at this as an economist, you know, what, sorry. Thank you very much. So we hear a lot about austerity. Funders and governments are talking about austerity. What do you think frontline workers can do individually or collectively to really push back or make their voices heard in shaping priorities, especially as we listen to Adina just explained?
Well, first of all, thank you for accommodating my schedule, which is a little bit hairy right now. I wasn't able to travel to Toronto to be with you in person, and I really appreciate the leadership that Okazi has shown in so many different ways, including being able to include me and the economic perspective in this opening panel about empowering workers. And I had a presentation to offer you about the role that you play in the economy more broadly. And I don't actually think, we're not going to go through the presentation now because of the timing, but I will make it available for anybody at Okazi, and you can ask me any questions you like. Actually, do you mind skipping forward 3 slides? Yeah, you probably don't know this because we never talk about it. But the care economy, generally speaking, and you have a role to play in it, is the largest economic factor in the economy. You would never know it because all we talk about is the trade exposed part of the economy, manufacturing, mining, oil and gas, all of those things, even construction. You can see looking at this that mining doesn't even appear in the top 10. That includes oil and gas, doesn't even appear in the top 10. Health and social assistance, of which you are part, and education is actually the major propellant of the Canadian economy. And it is not included in any industrial strategy, any version of what it means to be Canada strong. Can I show them the next slide, please? Oh, go back one. Go back one more then. See, I got things mixed up. So this is the role of the care economy in the economy. So how much GDP does it generate? 13.6%. The closest rival is real estate. You really don't want, as one of your plenary opening speaker said, you really don't want housing to be the major driver of your economy for all sorts of reasons. Next slide, please. And it has no rival for the types of jobs Canadians need to support themselves. Over 1 in 5 jobs in Canada are in this sector. You are part of that sector. And you're not an overwhelming part of it, but I'm going to ask the AV team to go over 2 more slides. This is why you are so important. This shows that we are entering about a 3-decade period where we have the smallest group of the population that is working aged and the largest group of the population that is either seniors or juniors, people too young and too old to work. So this small working age population has to support themselves and everybody else through their taxes in the services that they get. So this speaks a little bit to Dina's point about austerity and needing to kind of contract public spending at a time when we need more public spending. Can I just see the next slide? No, I don't want to see the next slide. Go back to that slide, please. Just to say that precisely because of this absolutely intractable demographic trend, your jobs integrating newcomers to this country and making sure all newcomers, whether they're temporary or permanent, are actually welcomed because we need them, that is a reality. So actually you are playing an economic role that you are probably not aware of, that without your work and the work that your work does to welcome newcomers to Canada, Canada's economy will fail. Because as actually Mark Miller said, about this time last year, on October the 24th, last year, virtually 100% of Canada's labor market growth comes from newcomers. Yeah, we have young people entering the labor market, but we have way more people exiting the labor market from the people who are already here. Without newcomers, the economy will shrink. Your job is essential for industrial strategy in this country. So you should be really strengthened by this particular moment and say, it's not just we deserve more money, it's without us, your economy is going to fail. My economy is going to fail. We are going to fail together. That's your superpower. That's the secret sauce you bring to this story.
Thank you, Armin. I think it's really great that we reflect on that we are so central to all levels of government's policy implementation and their priorities being accomplished. Without our sector, it will not be able to do so. So we're very, very valuable, and we have to think a lot more about that. So I want to just talk to Marcia for a second, because Marcia, your work, your research explores immigrant and racialized women and their labor market experience in Canada. And so when you think about decent work, what does that mean to you in this context? And how can organizations who are serving newcomers build equity into their own internal practices? Because this is a very feminized sector. So what are some of your thoughts?
Thank you for the question. So I have been doing research over 10 years on labor migration and employment integration of immigrants in Canada. So I'm gonna share a few research findings with you, and I would like to tell you that these are not new. The information that I'm gonna share with you has been going on for a while, more than 2 decades or so. So based on most recent data, Census 2021, IMDb data, as well as labor force survey data, we see that immigrants, including highly skilled immigrants who are university educated, they earn much less than Canadian born. And I think we all know that to some extent. And they work more than half of them work in a sector or in a job that is not matching with their educational qualification as well as professional experience and other social cultural skills they bring to Canada. Now, it's a big problem, it's a larger problem, but when you break down the data by gender and visible minority status, you will see a consistent pattern. that is racialized immigrant women, are at the bottom of the employment hierarchy in Canada. So just to give you a little bit perspective, they earn 28% less than Canadian-born, than their male counterparts. So they earn 28% less than the visible minority immigrant men. And they earn about 19% compared to non-visible minority women, as well as 32% less than Canadian-born women. So you can get the idea of how intersectional identity, being woman, being racialized, and being immigrant, these triple identity categories, the intersections of these categories make them really vulnerable in the labor market. And this has been going on over 2 decades, as I mentioned. So there is a really structural problem when it comes to integrating racialized immigrant women in general, but racialized immigrant women in the labor market. And I would like to also emphasize that the figures that I shared with you are for university-educated racialized immigrant women. So university education is not creating a significant advantage for them in the labor market. Now, obviously, it is related to a structural discrimination. And if we think about how to solve this problem, especially when you look at the salmon sector and care economy, as you mentioned, it's very feminized, and it's pretty much dominated by, again, immigrant women and racialized women. So this structural issue needs to be dealt with asking the deep question, the real question, that why we are seeing this trend in the first place. Do we have structural discrimination embedded within the system? First of all, it is important to acknowledge that first to address the problem. So that's my point. If we don't acknowledge that what is going on in the labor market when it comes to integrating racialized immigrant women, then we will never be able to address those problems. When it comes to the salmon sector, particularly, as we know that it is pretty much like dominated by immigrants. So immigrants, particularly immigrant women serving immigrants. And this is a sector that has been kind of under scrutiny at this point, and many of these discourses about the sector are focused on the efficacy or effectiveness of the employees, the workers, rather than the structural problem that is sometimes settlement sector has very short project cycles, very short funding cycle. Often it's under-resourced, understaffed. So we need to address, I would say, in general, the structural issues in terms of funding, in terms of support system, in terms of collaboration between the government and the settlement sector, as well as other nonprofit sector, to actually, first of all, acknowledge the problem and then figure out how we can have fair employment integration system, fair wage system, employment security, job security. We have to deal with precariousness. Increasingly, the job market is becoming precarious. So how to address those issues by bringing multiple sectors together to address those issues.
Thank you very much. We'll unpack a little bit more about how the concern around fairness in the sector, but I do want to ask Dina a little bit to talk about, we see a lot about movement from all levels of government about privatizing. You talked about a little bit earlier, you hinted at the privatization. Those of us who are delivering employment services, we've seen the privatization of that. Now we have private equity firms who are overseeing the employment services. I think of employment services as a public good, not something that should be a profit orientation. And so when you see how that rapid privatization from employment to settlement, the college industry, et cetera, how do you think our sector can address this or even put in place some steps to really bring forward to surface up the impact of this privatization, not just on jobs, but on the service recipients and what it means for our broader community and sustainability of people's lives?
I think this is the critical question. I mean, I think that, you know, we're really up against it right now. We're up against the austerity and cutbacks. We're seeing a federal government looking at, you know, cutting back public services and implementing an austerity agenda. We have the provincial government that's now in place for another 4 years and has implemented this horrific Employment Ontario program. And we see, you know, the Minister Piccini giving out millions of dollars to his mates. Meanwhile, you know, the sector is really struggling. I don't think a policy paper is going to do anything right now, to be honest. I don't think a nicely named brief that talks about the value of the sector is going to actually, you know, take them on. I think, as I mentioned before, I think we're at a moment where we have to actually organize. And it's not just, I'm not just talking about like us organizing to, you know, do a press conference or to, you know, do a brief about the value of the sector. We have so many reports that have been written over the years. I'm sure Debbie has bookcases and now hard drives full of those reports. We know what the value is. They know what the value is, but they don't care. They don't actually care. They actually want to privatize. This is a fundamental shift in a way that I've never seen before. And if we don't actually organize or recognize this moment, this is it. And I'm not being sort of dramatic and being a drama queen or whatever, but I am seeing this as a fundamental shift. And that's why I'm saying we actually don't have a choice but to organize. And so I want to ask you, how many of you have actually gone and visited your MP or MPP about this? How many of you could take 50 people from your agency and do a delegation visit to your politician? How many of you could take 100 people? Could you get 1,000 people in your riding to do something? That's the level of organizing that I'm talking about. Because if we think that this issue is going to be dealt with in terms of negotiations with the government, a brief, a nice meeting, those days are gone. Those days are gone. They have laid out their agenda, and we need to understand what's in that agenda. And if that agenda gets rejected on November 4th with Carney, well, guess who's in the wings? It ain't pretty. So we're not looking good federally, and we certainly aren't looking good provincially. And so the only option that we have is to actually organize our sector and start speaking out visibly and organizing the people that we work with, organizing our neighbors and our families. You deal with thousands of people every year. You've had their back. Will they have your back now? Will you organize so that they have your back and that we organize together as a sector? If we don't do that, half of us may be here next year, maybe 5 years from now, right? So this is our moment. Let's do this. We can do it. We can do it. We've been through hardships before. We bloody came to this country. I mean, that was hard enough, right? So I think that we are seeing an incredible rise of racism, xenophobia, and fascism to the south of us. That's our future if we don't actually organize right now. They are looking at the playbook of Trump. We have Bill C-12 that is being discussed right now, which is bringing in draconian surveillance measures, arbitrary cancellation of refugee applicants and targeting of groups of people. This is the Trump's playbook, and it's here right now, and it's in Parliament, and they're negotiating it right now. So it's up to us to see the writing on the wall and organize.
Thank you for that. I think, what I hear from that is we have a lot of value and we have to operationalize that, right? As much as we could and should do that. And Armin spoke earlier about the economic value of our sector and how, when we hear policy of focus on propping up mining and other industries, and we are just on the wayside. And Armin, I wanted to ask you about that a little bit because you said before that care work and community work are the work that keeps all other work possible. And so what would it look like if our society actually valued that kind of work? There's a campaign from Canada Helps right now that's really sort of centering how important the nonprofit sector is to Canada overall. But how can we demonstrate the value of our sector? And if that value was seen, what would that mean for our country?
Okay, so from the 1950s to the 1970s, you had a middle class that was created by unionizing manufacturing jobs, which was the spine of all economic production. We moved from agriculture as the backbone of economics to manufacturing as the backbone of economics. That has not been the case. So back in the day, it was like between 20 and 25% of the population that was making a living was doing so in some version of manufacturing. And it was by organizing workers and demanding a share of the profits that they were generating that we created the middle class that everybody talks about now. Well, I guess Mr. Harney doesn't talk about the middle class quite as much right now as we have been talking about for quite some time, over a decade, about building a better middle class. If you took the 21.2% of the current workforce that is in the care economy, and the care economy is not just nonprofit. That's a whole other conversation about what share of the care economy is becoming for-profitized, is becoming financialized. I have another thought that I want to get to, so I hope I don't forget this. But anyway, the 21% of the job market that is currently the way Canadians make a living, if every job was a good job in that sector, you would have the thriving backbone of the early 21st century middle class. And that would be true in every country that had a baby boom after the Second World War. Because in all of these countries, including China with their one-child policy in the 1980s, including South Korea, in all of these countries, the workforce is aging, and people are living longer, and people are having fewer babies. The need for care is one of the only organic sources of growth in these economies around the world, which is why the for-profiteers are eyeing your sector. But I want to get back to Dina's point about privatizing. In this instance, the only privatization that will happen if we do not put guardrails on how we accept newcomers to the country, the only privatization that will happen is the recruiting and staffing agencies, the people that actually bring people to this country, and then cream them for housing costs, for moving costs, for any cost they can find a way of extracting value from their work when they get here. And the second version of privatization is by maintaining this unhealthy relationship between temporary residents and permanent residents, because the temporary residents have no rights as workers. It doesn't matter what the rights are on paper. Generally speaking, without organizations like the Migrant Workers Alliance and Dina's organization, we don't even know what our rights are when we do not have permanent status in this country. So how do you fight for your rights when you're afraid that you're going to get deported? That's the new thing. Again, in any country that had a baby boom after the Second World War, this is the same dialogue playing out over and over again. It's an economic story. It is not a social justice story. Well, it is a social justice and economic justice story wrapped up in one. But you need to be very careful about how you are pitching your sector as an economic engine of the economy. To Dina's point, yeah, there are a million reports on the shelves on why the sector is important, but I have never heard the sector say, without us, you don't have labor force growth. Without labor force growth, your economy shrinks, right? Everybody's whining about capital investments and productivity. There's three factors that create an economy: capital, labor, and some kind of technology engine. And the technology engine is captured badly in the productivity measure, which has been flat in Canada since 2015, has not increased since 2015. And everybody wants people to work harder so that we grow faster. It doesn't work that way. We could have a whole other conversation about that. But we've got flat productivity, and so consequently, all these people talking about governments don't have it right, business has it right, and so you need less government, more market. Well, that's the formula that is yesterday's news because of population aging. We are moving forward into a nonprofit-driven era of economic growth or economic decline, but the market will not be as important as it was previously. So I think you do need to wrap your heads. I mean, this is a professional development day. This is a day that you have to wrap your heads around how you empower workers. Not just you need to be empowered, but you empower the economy because of the work that you do in integrating newcomers to this country and fighting for newcomers' rights, reducing temporary foreign workers, or at least putting them on a fast track to permanence, and actually making sure that you are organizing people in their workplaces to talk about their role. So, unionized workplaces where by and large in the nonprofit sector, you don't have benefits, you don't have pensions. We have the ONN, the Ontario Nonprofit Network, that has done yeoman's job of creating pools for pensions and benefits, actually bringing that to every workplace, making people feel like they can do better by joining up, by being in some kind of solidaristic movement, is partly what Dina's talking about. And the other part of what Dina's talking about is getting up the nose of the feds. The provincial government will do whatever the feds give them the money to do, and then they will squander it, right? So you need to work on both levels of government. But the main story for you are MPs, the federal government. What is their intake of newcomers? How do they treat newcomers? What are the rules around newcomers? And what is the money for settlement services for newcomers? All of those things are federal decisions. And to Dina's point, the guy that's waiting in the wings to be the king of Canada wants all of these people to go. He doesn't even understand the role they are playing in the economy. So there's lots of teaching to be done. And there's lots of insistence that you could be bringing to these meetings, and also with 1 or 2 page briefing notes that you just drop on their desk to remind them of the role of the care economy and your work in making sure that the Canadian economy does not collapse. Did you know we are the 9th largest economy on the surface of the planet? We can be and do anything we want. So let's not squander that strength, because you are what's going to make that economy slide down or stay in rankings on that poll. And it's the most important thing to any elected official. You might think that social justice or economic justice is, it ain't. GDP is the most important thing. So prove your role in that story of economic prowess to Canada.
Thank you, Armin. So, Marcia, every time I hear Armin speak, I feel like I should take to the streets and with placards and speak to everyone. As Armin says, our sector is a huge component of Canada's economic engine. We're very central to that. We need to understand that and we need to share that. But critical to that is our sector is made up a lot, primarily of the frontline workers, are immigrants and refugee, mainly women, who are supporting other immigrants and refugees in our subsector of the nonprofit space. So here we are, right? Or we're part of this huge economic engine, and we can say that we're not getting a huge part of that in benefits. So how can leaders in the room here, and who are not in the room and who can share with other leaders, who are guiding these organizations, make sure that those workers feel safe, respected, valued, in not just with platitudes, but with monies, with benefits, with resources, so that they are getting decent, well-paid jobs, and they are not exploited or invisible as they do such central work that helps our economy?
Thank you again for this question. So to address this issue, we need to realize that we are going through a transformation right now. At this moment, we are in a trade war, so that's kind of a threat for Canadian economy. We are also going through a technological transformation with the AI and advanced digital technology. There are lots of predictions that whether, to what extent people will lose job because of AI tools and AI software. And then we are also going through a very different situation when it comes to public opinion about immigrants. This is the first time, I think, last year, that majority of Canadians mentioned that there's too much immigration in Canada. So the public opinion is getting a bit against immigration and immigrants. The reality is we are seeing a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment on social media. So I'm trying to point out the realistic aspects that we are dealing with. So at the same time, there is an understanding, or I would say perception, that the outcomes from the settlement sector is not as much as expected by the policymakers. So I do interact with policymakers, and that's what I'm hearing. And there will be more. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but yes, you can expect more funding limitations and restrictions in the future because of that perception. Now, the point is, how can we fight with this perception, right? And the contextual transformation in terms of AI tools, in terms of trade war, in terms of economic kind of uncertainty, as well as anti-immigration sentiment that we are going through. When it comes to settlement sector, I would say that you do have a huge leverage by pointing out your role during the pandemic. We haven't forgotten about the pandemic, right? Between 2020 and 2022, the settlement sector, I mean, they contributed a lot in terms of providing services, providing information even about vaccination, about healthcare, about employment, and all other services, both in person and online. This is a success story. So when you make this argument, as Armin and Dina mentioned, that go to your local representative, go to the federal government, you have to make this argument how important this sector is and how the largest share of workers are actually work in care sector in general and specifically in settlement sector. You can always show those facts and figures and your contribution during the pandemic, which was really phenomenal. Like, you should get a lot of credit for supporting immigrants in general, supporting Canadian public in terms of your service provision, making services so accessible for all kinds of in terms of age and in terms of level of education, like all people were able to access services from settlement sector. So this is one. And second is that Canada has this sector, right? So many European countries, like when I go to European countries and tell them about settlement sector, they ask me what it is. So many countries don't have this sector for newcomers, for immigrants who will come here and, like, you know, the first 5 years, they actually need a lot of support for settling in Canada. So rather than making the sector weaker and rather than cutting funding and so on, it would be wiser actually to look at how it can be made more efficient in terms of services. If there are some loopholes, if there are some areas where this sector can improve, then it's fine. You can look at where you can also improve as well in terms of the internal, making employment fairness, equitable wage, and all these aspects internally, and even upgrade services if necessary. So there is a scope for the settlement sector as well to do some kind of reflection and review of their services and improve those in collaboration with other sectors, as I mentioned earlier. But it would be really unwise to make this sector weak rather than making it stronger to provide the services and support that newcomers actually need to become successful in Canada. So I would say advocacy, as previous speakers mentioned, advocacy is really important. Organization, labor mobilization is important. As Armin mentioned, that you are you're the employees, or you consist the sector, but also you are creating and developing the future workforce for Canada. So your contribution as employees, as well as as trainers and leaders for future labor force, should be emphasized as well. So I would say that it's a difficult time, but I think you have a lot of leverage to highlight, to emphasize, to make a strong case about how important, how significant, how needed your roles are. So that's all I can say.
Thank you for that. I mean, I can't emphasize enough that, we view ourselves as a critical partner for all levels of government meeting their strategic priorities. Without our sector, without our colleagues who are working, they will not be able to meet those goals. And we need to be able to remember that and articulate that. And so, Dina, I subscribe to the Global Mail, and every article that has the word immigrant or immigration is the most heavily commented on. And I torture myself reading the comments, unfortunately. Because, so we see a lot of scapegoating of immigrants, and it really affects every one of us. No one can tell if some of us have our citizenship, whether or not we are non-status or temporary or PR. So if we understand this, that attacks on immigrants is an attack on all of us, then how do we as a sector start speaking up and organizing against this attack? What role do we have to play?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if people heard about the action that was organized by Canada First at Christie Pitts. It's a hate group that was calling for deportation of all immigrants and re-immigration of immigrants, which means ethnic cleansing. And so Christie Pitts, for those of you who don't know, it's a very popular park in Toronto that is where a lot of immigrant communities exist around it. There's Koreatown, there's the Latinx community, there's the Ethiopian community around there, the South Asian community. And so they decided to organize their Canada First rally in that park. And so I thought what was interesting about that, so first it was important to have a community response. And it was important to bring people from our communities, from migrant, immigrant communities, to respond and say, we will not be afraid, and that this is not welcome, that hate and racism is not welcome in our community, and that we stand up against these folks. But what we also found was that a lot of people came to join Canada First and who told me that they were immigrants themselves, but that they want the borders to now close, because they're financially suffering. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that a lot of people, the right wing and a lot of these folks who are spreading this misinformation. So one of the things that I heard from folks that were there was that, did you know that refugees are getting $8,000 a month to survive? And that, did you know that folks are just, you know, these people are coming in and they're just getting to the top of the line. They don't have to wait for affordable housing. They get all the services that they need. They don't have to pay for anything. Yet look at me. I've been working here for 50 years and I don't have a pension. Sound familiar? I'm on the wait list for 7 years for affordable housing. I can't get it. Why do these people get everything and I'm not getting it? Why are my kids not being able to get a job at Tim Hortons and these people are getting those jobs? Why are they getting all this money and we're suffering and we can hardly make ends meet? We have to do this education. Like, if we just allow this misinformation and this scapegoating to just continue in our communities, we are as much to blame. We have to get out there in our communities to do the deep education amongst longer-term generational immigrant communities, as well as those folks who are new. We get separated as we come into this country by whatever the state designates. They say, you're going to be a refugee, you're a temporary worker, you're a migrant. You get to have PR because you fit the bill at this particular moment in time. May not have been that a year ago, but right now we need healthcare workers, so you get to come in. You don't get to come in anymore. So we are constantly being pitted and divided against each other, and our communities, because they're facing an affordability crisis and they can't find a damn place to live without paying an arm and a leg in rent, are looking at someone to blame. And that blame is being put on us. And so my point is just like in the US, some of us in this room, when we're on the streets, people don't know if we're undocumented or a migrant or a temporary farm worker. We just got this color of the skin. So I think it's a responsibility of all of us to understand what is happening right now and that this is just going to get worse. Because if Carney puts $50 billion into militarization, which is what he wants to do, he's already announced over 600 million that is going towards hiring CBSA officers over the next 5 years. This is Canada Border Service agents. Guess where they're going to come? They're coming into your community. They're going to be stopping people at the mall when they're going to work, on the streets. We've seen this playbook before. So $1.3 billion going into militarization and drones and surveillance, nearly 700 million of that going into hiring CBSA. Have people been watching what's happening in the US right now? Yeah? What do you think about that? Do we want that here? That's what's coming here. So we have to organize, as I said, like ever before, because this stuff is going to be unfolding. Our community, the communities that I work with, who are migrant workers, undocumented, coming in through the temporary foreign worker program, are doing all these kinds of essential jobs that, as you were saying, during the pandemic, people were hailed as heroes. Now, get out the country. We don't want you here. And so if we don't understand what's happening here and we don't organize, those same people are going to be stopped on the streets. We're already starting to see the levels of deportations go right up. People are living in fear. I know people who won't even leave their house and their apartment because they're so afraid to go grocery shopping right now. Is that what we want to build? Do we feel okay with that? So, and if we don't, and if we're outraged and if we're angry about what's happening, and if we are wanting to build a different kind of world for our communities, and if we believe that everybody has the right to come into this country with status and be able to live without fear, work without fear, walk the streets without fear, because they're just doing what we did, what we came to this country to do, then we need to organize. And we need to do the education in our communities. We need to join the campaign against Bill C-12, against Bill C-2. You need to get involved in and take action against wage theft. And we need to prepare our communities to deal with what are you going to do if you get detained and stopped on the streets. So we have a whole bunch of immigration materials that we are producing right now, ready for that. So if you want to have workshops and trainings and you want to be able to defend your community and defend the people that live and work in your community, then contact us, get involved, do something, because we have to do this right now. Ain't no one else going to be stepping up except the folks in this room. So are you going to step up? Okay, that wasn't a rhetorical question. Are you going to step up?
Yes.
Okay, let me ask that again. Are you going to step up? Yes. Okay. So let's see us all doing one or two things. And if we can't do that within our agencies because they're too afraid, then when did we need permission? When did we need permission from our bosses to do the kind of organizing we need to do? We need to do this regardless of whether or not our agencies say yes or no. And if there's any executive directors in this room, as an executive director, I am saying to you, let your people organize. Let your open the doors to this information, because otherwise you can just close the door of your organization.
All right. Thank you, Dina. Taking action. So we're going to leave here after the next 2 days, not passive, taking to the streets, taking to our MPP's office, taking action. Armin, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, because building up on all of this, so there is increased needs, there is increased polarization, there is increased demands, there's economic pressures that we're seeing. And then we are all here, likely all IRCC funded. Grateful for that. But IRCC has announced 15% funding cuts to the settlement sector, with more expected. So, I mean, how should nonprofit leaders respond when we're talking about decent work and decent work principles start colliding with survival mode? What policy arguments can we make? Because there are leaders in this room who I'm sure are struggling with that. So what policy arguments can we make that can connect worker conditions to service quality when we're engaging with our funders as we move forward with this cut hanging over us?
Well, that's a tough question, and we have to wrap in about 10 minutes. So I guess we're not getting questions from the floor, which is too bad. But I just want to say that the 15% cut is in 3 years' time. Apparently this year it's 7.5% federally. Lots can happen in 3 years. And if you make your case appropriately, you can maybe avoid some of those cuts. And I think the case being made appropriately is linking your mission to industrial strategy, because that's the name of the game right now. The name of the game is, how do we prevent declining growth because of Trump's attack? How do we actually make sure that the economy doesn't shrink? How do we make Canada strong? Okay, you're part of that solution. And I don't think you are making the case, either publicly or privately, on that grounds. And, just as Dina said that she's preparing materials, I hope to have a report out very shortly on private equity in the care economy, but the slides that I had prepared for you are yours. And they are coming from a forthcoming report. I would love that you flick to the fact that I put it together for you, but these are your numbers. These are the numbers you need to be trotting out and understanding what your role is in industrial strategy and averting that 15% decline, because it's not written in stone. It might be in some kind of expenditures review thing, but that's politics for you. Politics change. So unless we get Pierre Poilievre in power immediately, even he may not cut the only source of labor force growth right now as deeply as he's talking about. I mean, he might play it both ways. He might play it that, you know, you need to not trust anybody else. Don't even trust government. The only people you can trust is yourself. That's kind of the new so-called conservative line, which is it's as anarchic as you can get. This isn't conservatism, it's anarchy that is being propelled as an ideology, that the only people you can trust is yourself. You can't trust business, you can't trust government, you can't trust your neighbor, you just can't trust anybody, which is what is required for governments to go in and bulldoze all the rules and regulations that bind us together as a cohesive society that can grow based on each other's strength, that we are interdependent. That's what's under attack right now. So every way you can go back and say to the federal governments, to the public servants, to the Ontario government, you need us. You need us more than you're paying attention to. You cannot cut the single remaining source of growth because capital investments are down, productivity is flatlined, maybe it's going down because of all of this uncertainty, this global uncertainty. So what's left in terms of not a shrinking economy is us, what we are doing. So make sure you are ready to make that argument, but it's not just showing up on the streets and showing up and getting up the noses of our elected officials. That's not the only thing you have to do. You actually have to strengthen your own workforce. And you can do that, as I said before, ONN has got this how many of you guys out there in that room today are either running an organization or working in an organization that has no benefits and has no pensions? Right? This is like an ongoing problem. People are doing it because they love the work that they are doing, but they need to be made more secure. And that doesn't require government all the time. It requires pooling your own resources, buying into and building up solidarity for one another. And I really encourage you to think about all the ways you can step up and actually build strength for yourselves. The biggest way for me is to do it immediately with your own people. But the most effective thing in the 3-year timeline that this 15% cut is supposed to be coming in is making clear what your role is in economic growth. Please use the data that is out there that I was going to present to you today, that I will make available to OCASI. Use the data to make the case that they cannot get on without you, that a 15% cut in IRCC, which, by the way, some of it could be done through algorithmic matching, but that's as much of a problem as it is not. So to Marcia's point about, efficiencies, they've hired a Toronto-based company called Cohere to do kind of what Palantir is doing in the United States. And it's true that we could be using technology much more efficiently so people aren't spending as much time processing. And there are huge backlogs to be gone through. But it's also true that we need a human on board to make sure that you don't get ridiculous matching, skills matching, and requirement matching decisions, which we're also starting to see as the backlogs get cleared through. We're getting these absolutely perverse results, which are based on algorithms. So we need people to up their game in terms of being vigilant on the decisions that are being cast to in the name of efficiency. That could be a part of your pushback. You can't cut back the service by 15% and not expect more of this noise. And we will take you to court every step of the way. Last thing I'll say is that if they do cut the sector by 15%, it goes to what about some countries don't have settlement services. If they cut it by 15%, the only way it will be cut is by algorithms, right? There is no private for-profit sector other than staffing agencies and recruiting agencies that will move into this sector, and they need to be monitored even more. So there's a call to arms here for sure.
Thank you, Armin. I have 5 minutes left, so I think we may have time for just one question. There are mics there. If anyone have a question, you want to step up to the mic, we can take one question, 1 or 2 questions. Okay, if there are no questions for our panelists, I would like you to just join me in thanking Dina, Armin, and Marcia this morning for fantastic insights. So what we heard this morning is we need to take action. We need to mobilize not just ourselves, but our clients and the broader community. We need to tell the story of how impactful and critical our sector is to Canada's overall economic growth and productivity. And we also have to ensure that we center the critical importance of fairness towards this sector and the employees in the sector who are mainly immigrant women, and how important it is so that they feel valued and rewarded for the important work that they're doing. So thank you again, everyone. This was really fantastic. Thank you, OCASI, for bringing this together.
Thank you for your leadership.
Once again, for our great panelists, Armin, oh, she's gone. Armin, Marsha, Dina, and our fabulous moderator, Surana Sandy.